Dr. Russell, I think we can get started.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. On this gray autumnal day where everyone just wants to sit down underneath a nice cozy blanket, maybe read a book, we're going to be talking about the pleasure and benefits of books. We have an amazing speakers today who are going to share their wisdom. I'd also like to make a plug for the Boston Public Library. Which is, as you know, a very beautiful building with a lot of beautiful reading nooks. And they also have just had their first installation in 8 years, 250 years of arts and activism. It is a very compelling installation with plywood and scaffolding and a lot of images that we all know from Boston, but presented in a unique context. So I strongly recommend, if you're looking for something to do, to attend that exhibition. It was pretty amazing. So my name is Matt Russell. I am the acting section head for geriatric medicine here at Mass General. And I am pleased to introduce our moderator for this town hall, Susan Edgman-Levitan, who is the director of the Stokel Center for Primary Care Innovations. And she's going to lead us now and introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. I also think it's a really great day to just get under some kind of throw and read a great book, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So before we get started, I just want to go over a few of the housekeeping rules. Everyone on the town hall today is muted so that we don't have any background noise to interrupt our speakers, which sometimes happens by accident. You can view the person speaking on your full screen, or you can go to the gallery view in the upper right corner of your Zoom screen. You can click on gallery view, and that lets you see the speaker and everyone else on the call in their little boxes on the side. If your picture becomes jumpy or out of sync, you can go to the lower left-hand corner where you see the little video camera, click stop video, and that usually will help improve your connectivity. For questions, we ask that you use the chat feature, which is right in the middle of the bottom ribbon across the bottom of your screen. I just want to remind everybody, please do not put any personal medical information or personal medical questions in the chat, because everyone in our town hall today can see everything in the chat. But if you do have a medical question, please reach out to your doctor directly. And we look forward to all of your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. So with that, I want to introduce our speakers today. So we are today focusing on the pleasures and benefits of books. And we have with us Mary Warnement from the Boston Athenaeum, which is a private library right up the hill, actually, from my office at Mass General. She is the William D. Hacker Head of Reader Services at the Boston Athenaeum, where she oversees the Children's Library, Circulation, Reference, the Fellowship Program, and Special Collections Reading Room. She's worked at the Athenaeum since 2002 and has a background in medieval history. She enjoys travel and, to quote her, big surprise reading. We also have with us Judith Clow, who is one of the book club leaders at the Athenaeum. The Athenaeum offers many different book clubs on different types of literature, fiction, nonfiction, etc. And Judith leads one of the book clubs. She's studied English literature at Wellesley College and the University of Hartford, and she's attended summer seminars sponsored by NEH in Romanticism, Shakespeare at the Folger, Dickinson, and Whitman, and she studied Yiddish literature and language since 2020. So with that, I'm going to ask, let's get started. Thank you.
Thank you. As she said, I'm Mary Warnement and I work at the Boston Athenaeum. It's a member-supported organization. It's a unique combination of library, museum, and cultural center in a historic landmark building. I was honored to be asked to speak to you today about the Athenaeum and the pleasures and benefits of reading books. I asked Judith to join us, so after I've talked a little about the history and what we do, she can share her personal experiences, which you may find more relatable. There's an old saying that to be a proper Bostonian, you needed a membership at the Athenaeum, a plot at Mount Auburn, and a relative in McLean. And sometimes visitors enter this beautiful but perhaps intimidating building and feel they have to be, you know, a Brahmin in order to join. But no, you need not have come over on the Mayflower, attended Harvard, live in Lewisburg Square. You simply need to be interested in books, bookish things, culture, and art. We're centrally located and have the Harry Potterish sort of address. We are at 10.5 Beacon Street. When we built this location in the mid-19th century, using fractional addresses was very common, or not to have a number at all. At first, we were, you know, on Beacon Street near Bowdoin. By the time we had to have a number, we were between numbers 10 and 12, and we chose 10.5, and it is plaguing me to this day. Let me summarize just a few facts about us. You know, libraries, but an Athenaeum, what's that? As I said, we're member supported, you know, like NPR. That means people must join. We were founded before public libraries were a gleam in, you know, in anyone's eye. I like to say that we're like a health club. It's something that you chose to spend more money on every year. So membership is open to all interested individuals. You don't need to have anybody sponsor you. You have access to a circulating library of over 600,000 volumes, electronic resources like ebooks and audiobooks, and reference assistance, not to mention all of the rare materials we have as well. Members enjoy a wide variety of events like concerts, book talks, lectures, art exhibitions, and we have at any given moment between 40 and over 50 discussion groups, what we call, you know, book clubs to choose from. Again, all of this in a historic landmark building on Boston's Beacon Hill. Our collection focuses primarily on the humanities, with particular strengths in New England culture, literature and fiction, American history, biography, and art. We have very extensive research collections, rare books, manuscripts, prints, photographs, maps, and those are open to both members and guests, visiting researchers. If we have something rare and we're the only ones who have it, why, of course, we want you to be able to get access to it. We traditionally collected art, and we continue to exhibit it throughout the building. We have a dedicated art gallery where we mount shows that members see as part of their benefits, but visitors can pay admission for the first floor, which includes those special exhibitions. You can also sign up to take a tour that leads you throughout the entire building, which is led by our excellent docents. You can even be a member for the day. We have a day membership, and we have an option where you can convert that immediately into an annual membership if you decide you really like it. We were founded in 1807, over 200 years ago, by the Anthology Society, a group of men interested in literature. They were writers and editors and planning to publish a periodical, the monthly anthology and Boston Review. They weren't wealthy men. They were intellectuals. They all knew they were buying similar items, expensive things, newspapers from London, and those are expensive. You know, think about how, you know, you can get a deal maybe on the New Yorker, but, you know, something like The Economist might cost a lot of money. So they decided to pool their resources and have a reading room, get more bang for their buck. They wanted the works of all the best authors. They wanted reference books, rare materials. They wanted a chemistry lab and coins and a curiosity case of natural history. Everything. And that's one reason why they chose this unusual word, Athenaeum. In ancient times, an Athenaeum was a temple to the goddess Athena. She's the goddess of wisdom. These temples often served as schools or informal places of learning. That meaning persisted into the 19th century, and the word was often used for a library with a broader goal than a collection of books. It often included a lecture hall, sometimes with laboratories and galleries of art. And our original mission was to promote the love of intellectual improvement and pleasure, which, you know, given the passing centuries, still sounds pretty accurate. We narrowed our focus from being encyclopedic to our current focus on the humanities as the 19th century passed. There's many surprising examples of early works on many subjects in the Athenaeum. Researchers can expect to find real depth in certain areas like book history, publishers' bindings, bibliography, as I said, fiction and biography. We have a very renowned collection of modern artist books, if that interests you. American history, New England, American imprints, tracts, publications in Native American languages. We have an upcoming event about some work we've done to have our Indigenous collections improved and promote their access and connections with Indigenous cultures. Our collection of prints and photographs is primarily a historical documentation collection. That means we're showing prints and photographs of what areas of New England looked like, both, you know, its culture, its industry, its political life, the environment and topography of Boston and New England. But we continue to buy contemporary art from artists, and especially to cultivate new and young artists. We have a fine collection of print and photographs from the Civil War, as well as portraits and historical prints that chronicle all of American history. When we were founded, the founders advertised in a document they called Memorial. And we have a Josiah Quincy, who was a mayor of Boston and just seemed to be a Renaissance man who did everything, also wrote our first history and has great descriptions of what they were doing in that first 20 to 40 years. We, the members, appealed to the wealthy class, especially the mercantile class, those men who were living down near the harbor and were involved in the China trade. We had memberships that were called proprietors. They were $300 in 1807. And we still have proprietors. 1,049 is what it's capped at. But we also offer annual memberships, either for individuals or families. And the family is, you know, two partners and their children under the age of, I think, 21, living in the same household. Proprietors pay more in order to receive their share than what an average member does. And it's their way of supporting the institution. It helps us buy books, art, newspapers, repair the roof, and build new spaces. We're not the first library in Boston or America. I have learned to avoid that adjective. And while we weren't the first, I do like to tell people that we are the last membership library in Boston, and we're part of a group that still exists. It's small, there's under 40 of them. Places like the Charleston Library Society and the New York Society Library both predate us, but still exist. As our founders were looking for examples, they looked to Europe, and in particular, the Liverpool Athenaeum. In the beginning, we had a staff of two, the librarian and the janitor. And we were in rented rooms, then slightly larger rented rooms, then a small house. If you have bookshelves in your home, I think you know how this happens. You quickly fill every location you have. In 1822, so this is just 15 years in, we received a gift of a mansion from one of our early benefactors. James Perkins gave his mansion on Pearl Street, which is now the financial district. And the building was altered on occasion to suit our changing needs. We added a lecture hall and an art gallery. And we were the only public venue for art in Boston. There were galleries, but of course, if you didn't have the money to purchase those things, you probably weren't walking in. Remember, there was no Museum of Fine Arts or Boston Public Library in the early 19th century. Those came later, after mid-century. Our first annual exhibition of art was in 1827. We're approaching our 200th anniversary of that. 10 and a half, where we are now, was our fifth home. The architect was Edward Clark Cabot. Sounds like a good Brahmin name, doesn't it? And was constructed between 1847 and 1849. It took us 2 years, and it is in the Neo-Palladian style. He was a 16th century architect known for symmetry. If you know Beacon Hill, you know it's full of brick, bow-front townhouses. Our end of Beacon Street near the State House was originally like that. Now it's got some taller buildings, hotels, office centers. When we chose our design, it's neoclassical stone facade. If you look at pictures today, you think, oh yes, that looks just right. But at the time, it was avant-garde and controversial. It was our first space we designed specifically for our needs. And we had 3 floors, each for a function. The first floor was the sculpture gallery. The second was the library, and still looks much the same today. And the third was our painting gallery. As the 19th century passed, Bostonians, New Englanders, and people affiliated with the Athenaeum thought Boston needs its own standalone museum. And we were part of the effort, amongst others, to create the Museum of Fine Arts. And in fact, one of our board members sits on the board of trustees for the MFA. We housed the MFA while they were awaiting their building to be built. And we even donated a lot of art pieces directly to the museum to help it get started. And after the MFA is founded and moves out in 1874, we convert our 3rd floor, house books. By the beginning of the 20th century, we needed more space again. Became clear we also needed fireproof materials. Boston Fire of 1872 was worrying us greatly. We at first were going to build new over in Back Bay, the hot new neighborhood, as it was filled in. But instead, we decided to enlarge the building. And we added 2 more floors. The 4th and 5th floors took 2 years again, 1913 to 1915. We completely emptied and gutted the building. The images from the time are shocking. It was then rebuilt in the same style, but with improvements like fireproof materials, larger windows, more stacks, and a handsome 5th floor reading room. This is our iconic space. If we are in the news, if somebody takes a picture, they're going to photograph that room. It is a silent reading room. People often refer to it as a haven or sanctuary in a world where there's noise and screens everywhere. There's a beautiful coffered ceiling, alcoves where people can study. There's alcoves and nooks throughout the building, but the 5th floor is the silent space and has excellent light. History, somewhat appropriately, is shelved on that floor. And every time I go up, I wish I could sit down myself and spend some time reading there. So in 1999 to 2002, we did another major restoration too. We, this time not so much for space, that we got a little, but we needed a modern HVAC system. We moved out for 3 years to a warehouse in South Boston, maintained a small reading room on Beacon Hill for members, and then we had events throughout the city. And then again, we brought in HVAC, modern air conditioning throughout the building, redid the children's library, the art gallery, and got a dedicated special collections reading room, which is really exciting, a secure space. We had always allowed people to look at our rare materials, but now we had a much better space and can really encourage more people to discover it and to use it. We've got 5 floors, but every floor is a mezzanine, so it's more like 10 floors. And then we have a stack area that has 10 levels. We have a basement and a sub-basement. And so even though when you're standing out front, it looks a little like a 2-story building, it's a really, really big space. And that, in addition to the 10.5 magical address, we've got all of these extra spots where people can get lost. But then I'm here to help people find their way around. Just a few years ago, 2021-22, we expanded into the building next door on our west to create some more space. Members had been asking, they love the silent 5th floor, but they wanted more spaces where they could talk. So we could add what we are calling the living rooms for conversation. So there's a little lounge and a kitchen there. They can eat and meet other people. The 5th floor stayed silent and beautiful. Speaking of the noise, we were able to completely rebuild the children's library to revitalize the space for our youngest readers. Some milestones in our history. Again, we weren't the first, but I like to call out an inaccuracy I hear people repeating. There's some reasons I suspect people think that women weren't allowed here, but that's a myth. From the very beginning, our memberships, the proprietorships were family memberships, and the whole family was using them. A woman, Perkins, James Perkins' wife, inherited his share upon his death in 1822 and used it until her death. And the first woman to own a share outright is in 1829. We had a woman, Hannah Adams, who was a distant cousin of our first librarian, William Smith Shaw. And she had been his tutor and another of our founders' tutor when they were at Harvard. She was a historian. She was a woman who earned her keep as an author in the late 18th, early 19th century. Her friends, William Smith Shaw and others, asked the trustees to allow her to use the Athenaeum without paying. And so in my mind, she's our first fellow. There are some incidents later in the century where there was talk of hiring women and whether or not to do it. And there was a public debate in the newspaper about, oh, women, would they walk our narrow galleries? And I suspect that in this controversy, it got combined with some random story about Hannah being locked in at the lunch hour. And so they thought, oh, women, they're so nervous about them, they have to lock them in, which is completely false. And so if I've got many takeaways I want you to have from today, but if you remember that women are allowed in, I would appreciate that as well. We have many famous librarians throughout our history. In the mid-19th century, the Athenaeum was one of the largest libraries in the country. And Charles M.I. Cutter is a local librarian who developed our classification system, and Library of Congress is based on it. I like to say he is a rock star in the very, very small world of librarianship and bibliography. We've got over 100,000 rare items in the books, maps, etc., and over 100,000 individual sheets, prints, broadsides, those sorts of things. Browsing the stacks, though, amongst our circulating books is one of the great benefits. We do participate in interlibrary loan, and anyone can make an appointment to see our special collections. Just through our online catalog, you see a button in every record that you can click on and register and ask, I'd like to come next Thursday at 2. One of our major collections to go out is fiction, followed closely by history, biography, and art. And we really specialize in print books, but we have audiobooks and ebooks. Our members tend to be voracious readers, using every library at their disposal, browsing bookshops, buying online, downloading, and using their phones when they're commuting or traveling. I admit I'm not often asked to promote literacy or argue about the benefits of reading, because where I work, it's kind of a given. People who come to us have made that. They've made that extra step and said, this is what I want in my life. They've chosen to come here, but I'm certainly happy to spell out the benefits of reading. It's multifold. You can learn specific information, but you can read for pleasure. And when I was first preparing some notes for this, I just jotted that bullet point down and ignored it. But I want to emphasize it. Don't discount the need to escape stress and to alleviate, the mendacity of life, boredom. Reading is healthy. There are studies showing that fiction in particular, reading fiction, fosters empathy. Experiencing someone else's story, their highs, their lows, even fictional ones, especially fictional ones, can seem real and help connect us to how others are feeling. There's expressions that books can transport you to another place. You get lost in a book. These expressions exist because, they're a cliche for a reason, because it's what truly happens. There's all kinds of things to like in a book: the characters, the writing style, the setting, the thrill that you might experience. And they also connect us. They connect us, as I said, to others, but to ourselves. They connect you to the person you think you are, the person you were, the person you want to be. Reading engages the mind. This is a personal anecdote. There's all kinds of real research done by scientists, but my husband and I, we like to go to the gym, and sometimes once a week you do just we read the bike and I'm sorry, we ride the bike and read. And of course, there's TVs all over the health club. And my husband really paid attention and noticed that when he was reading on the stationary bike, the watts, the calories burned, everything were higher when he was reading than when he decided just to watch the news or sporting events. Reading engages parts of your brain. Studies show that it improves memory, it can improve your general well-being, your mental health, can help you sleep better. I can provide links to those kinds of research if you ever want to follow up. Some have asked, does it matter what you read? I mentioned fiction versus nonfiction for promoting the sense of empathy. Does it matter how you read? Or to put it the way many people say, is an audiobook cheating? And I just want to ask everyone to stop and think, who is assigning this reading? How are you cheating? Is there a test? You shouldn't feel like you are cheating. I'm a librarian in a very historic building, and so sometimes people will be shy. They'll say, oh, they want me to recommend a mystery. I love mysteries too. All forms of reading have benefits. And listening to an audiobook provides a lot of the same pleasure and benefits to many that reading a book in print does. It's true. Studies do show, and they're still working on this for the last 10 years ago, because, ebooks and audiobooks are new. But it is showing that if you need to learn something, reading it in print, and if you write notes on top of that, writing rather than typing, that does facilitate remembering it better. But it also depends on whether or not perhaps you have something like dyslexia, in which case, hearing it can matter. So, whether you listen to an audiobook in the car or while you're doing dishes or maybe while you knit, these are all things that can engage and listen. I know many people who like to do both. And I might bring this up with with Judith too, about Joyce, because certain authors, I know some people really feel that you get a benefit by hearing it over reading it because it was written in a kind of oral history. Research, as I said, it shows not only does reading fiction promote feelings of empathy, but those often translate into actions like being more charitable. Reading promotes social cognition, or to put it in layman's terms, it gives you the ability to read the room. It helps you understand the reactions of others because you've been reading, you have a fictional character and you feel what they're feeling. It means that when you're actually in a room with other people, you have developed the skills to assess how that other person is feeling, their facial expressions. And finally, reading, it can help you build a community. The same aspects of promoting empathy and reading a room, they're going to give you a sense of belonging. And so I'd like to end by talking about some resources you can use to do all of the above. And so I mentioned having takeaways I'd like you to have. Number one, use your library and librarians. Maybe you're not a member of the Athenaeum. I would love to welcome you, help you figure that out if you'd like to. But as residents of the state of Massachusetts, you've got access to the Boston Public Library. That is not just for the city of Boston, it's for everybody. There is more than enough love of books and the services libraries offer. There is no competition between us. We have worked together and collaborated many times. I talked to those librarians. I use their resources myself. I'm also positive that many of you, no matter where you live, have a public library in your town or nearby. Librarians, it's in our DNA to help people. And one of the things you can do is receive technological help. I have a list of resources that I shared and that maybe can be shared in the chat or as a PDF with you by email after, pointing to some of the resources that the Boston Public Library has. And one I'd like to highlight is one you really may not be aware of, one-on-one sessions. to help you with your own device. You schedule a time, you bring your phone, your tablet, and tell them what you want to do with it, and they will help you. Finding what to read, I almost feel like there's too much out there. There's too many ways. Of course, friends and families can make suggestions, but you can build community by starting a conversation with a neighbor. What are you reading? This is one of my favorite conversation starters that works anywhere, on the subway, as well as, at a cocktail party. You can, I've got too many stacks by my bed and by my front door, but let me just suggest a few other things. Surely you've heard of the New York Times bestsellers list. And that can be found in many places, even if you don't have access to the New York Times as a subscription. The best books of the year. If you like to go a little more old school, the Book of the Month Club still exists. You can sign up and still get a book sent to you every single month. There are so many award-winning books, the National Book Award, Pulitzers, but there are lots of lesser known prizes for like nature writing, travel writing, biography. I have my favorites. You can follow specific publishers and authors. This is something that you can really easily do on social media, if you do this at all. For instance, I enjoy the mysteries of Charles Finch, and he's got a very active Facebook presence and engages with his readers at least once a week, not just promoting, saying, hey, buy my book, but asking people for their advice on a certain kind of history, on what they like to read, recommendations of, TV to watch. It's really great fun. There's social media out there, and you can find what you want and often what you don't want. But there are some that are specific to reading. Library Thing lets you catalog your books and possibly share your shelves with others. You can keep it private. You can also use Goodreads. This allows you to review and rate the books that you read. Again, you can keep it public or keep it private. And I know book clubs often use Goodreads as a way to connect, to share what they're thinking and also plan when they're going to meet. Joining or starting a book club is a great way to really activate the benefits of reading. Reading is in many ways a silent, solitary endeavor, but it does lead you to connect to others. Your local library, your community center, where you live, your neighborhood. You can start one online. There's bookclubs.com has a free version where you can start or join an online or in-person book club that somebody else has done. Or you can start your own in your own space or online. And I also created a document listing 3 major free online resources you can use to join online. One is one that you're using it right now, Zoom. And this is in particular why I asked Judith to join us today, because she's one of our moderators. She started by leading the Ulysses book group in 2022, which was the 100th anniversary of the book's publication. She was nervous about using the Zoom technology, but I was really eager to work with her. I'm not going to deny it's a challenge, and it's great to have somebody to help you do this. And so I just wanted to ask Judith if she could chime in and talk about, and you can start with what was easy or what was hard, Judith.
Okay, talking about reading with other people, which is what you do in a discussion group. And in a sense, it's different from a book club in that there's no food. Athenaeum does. The one thing Mary forgot in her very discursive talk was that there's a restaurant, and it is absolutely superb. That said, even though there's no food, one of the things that happens in a discussion group, when you're, I think every discussion group at the Athenaeum, and how many are there, Mary? I don't know.
There are, the last time I counted, there were 54.
Okay, so
it changes every
and
week.
each one I'm sure is different, but I've never been in any except this one. And when we began, we talked about having it be both on Zoom and in person at the library in a hybrid. And I think there are discussion groups that work that way. Ours is on Zoom only, and it has worked very well. And we started out reading Ulysses, which is like starting out at in a very a complicated and difficult place. And I take courage from a woman named Holly Harder, who has run the Proust group at the Athenaeum for many years. She is a professor of French at Brandeis. She really knows Proust. I am not. I'm a retired high school teacher. My job is mostly calling on people. But what Holly told me, and it was very nice, that after it took us about 2.5 years to go through Ulysses, and the thing that we most learned was everybody needs to have the same text. It's very hard to discuss a book where people are on different pages. So having the equal pagination, asking very strongly that people buy the same edition of a text, that's been the challenge. It's been a real challenge, but it's been kind of fun. So what Holly told me was they have read À la recherche du temps perdu 3 times. The first time it took them 3 years, the second time it took them 5 years, and they're in the middle, and they expect that it's going to take them 7 years this time. And that's what happens when you read with other people. The discussion is so enriching that we really, in the Joyce group, which is no longer reading Joyce, and I'll get to that in a moment, we're going back to it. We feel that we are carrying the flag for James Joyce at the Athenaeum, even though we're not currently reading Joyce, but I'll talk about that. So and I've already forgotten where I was, so I'll talk about it. We in the group, Joyce has 4 major works, one of which is Finnegan's Wake, and we decided not to read Finnegan's Wake because of its experimental nature and the fact that there are many groups in the city of Boston, freestanding groups, I think, not associated perhaps with the Athenaeum, were reading Finnegan's Wake, and it's not something that our group and all decisions are that democratically arrived at. I don't make the choices, but we decided not to read Finnegan's Wake, but because we started with Ulysses, which is not easy, but we decided we liked one another a lot. We liked the way we read, that we would then read Dubliners, which is Joyce's collection of short stories. And because we had read Ulysses, and because there are some Ulysses is much the Dubliners is not experimental in the same way, but we were introduced to characters and we had some sense of the way that Joyce worked. So after 2.5 years of reading Ulysses, when reading Dubliners, when we're reading the short stories, were really, I think, the most successful discussions that we've had so far. In that it was the nature of the text was such that, and I have to say, in our discussion group, almost everybody participates all the time. There's one wonderful man who doesn't read fiction who occasionally will chime in by saying, "I don't read fiction, but," and so that works very well. But so what my job as moderator is to literally to call on people. I do about 10 minutes of preliminary work before we begin a session in talking of introducing the first topic. But after that, it's very much emanates from the people in the group. So we read Dubliners, I think, with a great deal of pleasure. And then we went back and read A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, and that was when I really became I don't know, energized about being on the same page. It's hard to it was somewhat more difficult to discuss that book. Our membership has varied. People have come in and left and come back, and we have I'm one of the categories that Mary didn't talk about is being a life member. I was made a life member of the Athenaeum. I'm not even sure what that means, but it was a retirement gift when I retired from Groton School, where I had taught for a long time. And what it has afforded me is the opportunity to make other people members at a reduced rate. That is to say, I give, instead of, maybe this is not right, but this is what I do. I give gifts to people of memberships at a reduced rate instead of contributing financially to the Athenaeum. I figure
Thank you, Judith. That's
I
great.
I want more people, and those people to whom I give gifts have gravitated to the Joyce discussion group. So in the Joyce discussion group, we decided, having read those three major works, that it was time to look at other related topics, one of which was other, and we discussed a great deal, what do we mean? What do we need? Do we need to talk about Irish literature in general and talk about early Irish literature like Swift? Do we need to look at other modernist writers? Do we need to look at contemporary Irish writers who claim some heritage from Joyce? And we decided on those two. So after we finished Portrait, we started reading To the Lighthouse. And one of the hilarious things was that people felt very defensive. They had to say which was better, Ulysses or To the Lighthouse, which modernist author used, and I'm neutral on the subject. I love them both. And it's just that chapter 17 of To the Lighthouse is my favorite chapter in all of literature. So of course I had to say that. But we have people who are Joyce scholars who have been published in the James Joyce Quarterly, but we also have people who have never even opened the text. But in the group, I think everybody does participate. And so the other thing that we decided to do, we self-nominated a select committee of people to choose a contemporary Irish writer, and our committee chose William Trevor, a recently deceased Irish writer whose short stories have been in the New Yorker a lot, but he's a fine novelist. And we will, after we finish To the Lighthouse, which we should do in 3 or 4 more meetings, we will start to read something called Two Lives, Two Novellas by William Trevor. So all of these decisions are made democratically. And there are various kinds of reading groups. Some of them, we have some one-shot reading groups where you just sign up and read.
Yeah, that's something new we started just about a year ago. And I can't believe we didn't think of it earlier, because not everyone can commit to once a month, to reading Proust every month for the rest of their life. And let me tell you, the Proust group has been going over 20 years. Great, but not everyone is ready for that. So yes, I ask a member to volunteer. We've got a few we know, but we're always reaching out, and it can be, the latest thing by Zadie Smith. It's often the hot title, but earlier this week, Tuesday, we had a meeting. They read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow because it seemed great for the season, and so we picked, a classic. I run all of the groups, but I also lead one in particular, and mine is a short story group, which, like Judith, meets only online. And I'm glad you pointed that out, Judith. I forgot to mention, yes, we experimented with hybrid. And there are a few groups who stuck with it, but we were finding it's the hardest thing to do of all, to be both online and in person, because the group in the room and the group, to pay attention to the other. And so we seem to be making two groups of people unhappy rather than everybody happy. So now when we start a new group, we say you pick in person or online. And for instance, my short story group, I usually get 8 to 15 people depending, but I've got like 40 people who are signed up for it. And that's fine with me that they don't come every month. A short story, you can think, oh, you can read it on the commute at home, which sometimes you can, but they're so well written and so much packed in. I have had many really rewarding conversations with people about these little bits. So I do, if you want to dip your toe in, maybe do a one-off about a short story or a novella where people don't have to commit to reading, one of the modernists. I had forgotten, Joyce, that's right, that you moved to, as you call it, Joyce adjacent. But this is when the groups become living organic things. They take on a life of their own. People get to know each other. I mean, I've been doing the short story group for for over 5 years now, and there's only a few people from that same time, but you get to learn who's just had a grandchild, who can't come next month because they're traveling for work. I once zoomed in from a hotel in New York, and that people were so excited because that was right when we were starting to travel again. It's just a really great way to connect. Judith, I'm going to look up chapter 17 of To the Lighthouse because that's one of my favorite books too. So I'll see which chapter that is.
Mary,
So
Mary, I think we need to move to answering some of the questions that people have submitted. So thank you. I love books. I just had my neighborhood book club meeting last night, and we've been meeting. This is all the women in a sort of prescribed neighborhood in Brookline. We've been meeting for 20 years. We just calculated it last night. And a lot of, as people move in, they join. But anyway, a couple of questions about the library.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about programs that members can partake, and what is the percentage of women members?
I'll answer that first because it's easy. I don't know the percentage of women members because that is not information we ask. We offer a discounted membership if you are under 40 at both the individual and family level, but that is self-selected, so people will check a box. So we do have a little bit of data on age, but again, there could be a household of 5, and if they don't get cards for their children, then we don't know the numbers. So that can be a little iffy, but I'm just going to tell you anecdotally, I would say I probably see maybe a slightly more women in the building than men.
Okay. Can you say a little bit about the age breakdown? You just made reference to that. Yeah.
The sweet spot for us are people in their middle age. Once you reach a certain point in Boston, you've got a little extra money. Maybe you've had children fly the coop. And so it's really the people in their kind of 40s to 60s. That's our biggest number. And I started here in 2002, and we've been working since then to increase across all age groups. And with our children's library and programming for families, there we really, preschool is what we focus on. And the effort over many years and our increased, we've gotten with our most recent renovation more in the news, and membership has gone back up, during the pandemic. Like every membership organization, we dropped off, but we are healthier than we were before. And we have seen a huge increase in the number of young people using the building. I didn't ask membership for any breakdowns of those numbers before. We have kind of a quarterly meeting where they share that sort of stuff that I'll be part of in a couple of weeks. But it's really, really encouraging to see.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, my family uses the children's room.
Yes.
For our granddaughter, and she absolutely adores it.
I'm so glad
we
to
have
hear
to
that.
pry her out. One other quick question. You talked about listening to books versus reading books. One question that came in is that like you, if you have any thoughts about this, I know how I choose whether I want to read a book in print or on a Kindle. I don't really listen to books. I like the words. But can you say a little bit about the difference between reading a book in hard copy versus on a Kindle? Any advantages? How do you think about that?
I would say that is by and large, a personal choice, what you like or don't like. I remember, when Kindles first came out, I thought, and I borrowed one from someone. Oh, this would be great. My husband, I read in bed, I have the light on, my poor husband. But at that time the buttons clicked. And so he quickly said, please stop. I'll click, 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 click. E-readers have changed. You can do it silently now. So I'm going to admit my own bias. I prefer reading an actual book. I read all kinds of things on computers and tablets and phones. But when I'm given my choice for pleasure, I'm going to read a book. The data when you're looking at, whether it matters, I mean, there's no real harm. Maybe you might want to, reading a screen can, make your eyes weary after a certain amount of time. So that could be one area. Some people use blue glasses for that. But it's really about what works for you, what you prefer. And as I said, when it comes to some of the research showed they were studying, what's the difference between listening to audio and reading ebooks, and they were testing, and they were actually, they didn't test print books in that. And they were seeing some similarities between what you learned between the audio and the ebook. Whereas later, as they did more studies, they saw that there was a little more retention when you were reading it in print versus reading it on a screen. And the scientists themselves know that they need to do more, they need to look into this more. So I would say, if you don't like a tablet, you don't like reading on it, don't force yourself to do it. The books still exist. The print book is still outselling ebooks, and it's, knock on wood, going to be around a long time.
Okay, Judith has her hand up. Go ahead, Judith.
Only because I wanted to say I'm 90 years old. My eyesight is failing. My hearing is almost gone entirely. But, and so I can no longer hold. I find it uncomfortable to read holding a book, and therefore I read on my phone, which is fine. But my Kindle is even lighter weight, and of course the advantage of reading on the Kindle is that you can immediately get definitions of words, even though I tend to say, "Hey Google, what does this mean?" And so it's just, in my group, as far as the ages go, I think we're pretty much a good range from people in their 30s up to someone even older than I am, who's 92. But we've chosen paperback books, which are not so onerous to hold and read. And many people read at a table. I never learned to read at a table, but if you read at a table.
And using it on your phone, reading on your phone or your Kindle means you can increase the size of the text.
Print size, yeah.
Yes, which comes in really.
And it can look up Irish slang very quickly.
That's true.
And Irish locutions.
That is nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Great. Well, I pick books. When I read a book in print, it's usually because I want to write in it. I think I want to write in it, or I know it's a book I want to share with somebody. That's kind of my criteria. So, but I love being able to be sitting anywhere and just download a book. That's also an advantage.
Yes.
So I'm going to see if there are any other questions. Please put them into the chat. And I also want to mention that, Monique asked about locations and time to read. Any recommendations about that?
Finding space, not only an actual physical space, but space in your day. If you want to make this a habit, making it a habit is key, and being comfortable, having good lighting. I know as I've aged, it's harder and harder for me to see. So I need, to have a very bright light. So on my love seat in my favorite corner where the cat is going to come and sit on my lap, I made sure to get a good little lamp on that table that lets me see the page very easily. But if it's something that you're getting back in the habit of, actually setting a time, if you're the sort who makes a to-do list for your day, you can add it to it, like maybe you read while you eat your mid-morning snack or have your afternoon tea or something. I know my mom is a voracious reader, and a very, very good friend of hers would just say, "I don't know how you find the time. I don't know how you find the time." And my mom said, "I don't have any more time than you do. I make the time." And so that's what it becomes about. And again, if you find there are times, if you're open to audiobooks, that really opens up time, because you can do it while you are folding the laundry, while you are washing the dishes, or, if you still commute. I know people who just, they listening to audiobooks makes their commutes bearable, either in the car or on the subway. or commuter rail.
I'm going to someone just wrote in a comment about addressing the needs of older people. And we talked about increasing font size. You can look up words, which I also love. I think that you did mention tech support for people if they need tech support with devices or whatever, and a buddy system to join a group or a connection with younger readers around a topic. I think all of those things are things that are actually possible through the Athenaeum, but also through the Boston Public Library services. But if you just want to, we've got about 3 minutes if you just want to say
Yeah.
quickly, because I also want to make sure people know about our next town hall. But go
Absolutely. I
ahead.
will say quickly, in the documents that I share with Monique and that she put in the chat and is going to share, I outlined some of the things at the Boston Public Library, which would be a lot of public libraries, the large print books, and there are a lot of electronic resources and ebooks, which can also read to you. You can set the settings so that instead of you having to read it, it turns into audio. And there are lots of you don't have to be able to afford a Kindle or afford Amazon Audible. You can go to the public library and get access to, they've got not only ebooks, audiobooks, but movies. And again, the tech support. And I neglected to mention, your younger relatives. I, lean on my nieces and nephews all the time. Grandchildren help my mom all the time. I'm not going to lie, it's hard. Judith mentioned hybrid meetings. As I said, we stopped doing them because the tech combined with the social aspects, you've got to keep track of this and make sure everyone's welcome. It just was too hard and we stopped doing it.
I just want to say that for those people who fall asleep when they're reading, I fall asleep all the time when I'm reading. Give yourself space to fall asleep.
Yeah.
What's the big deal? Sleep, wake up, read, sleep. And sometimes your dreaming will help you with reading, and sometimes your reading will help you with dreaming. And I think as old people, we need to give ourselves permission to fall asleep because that's what we do. And it's good for us.
Yeah.
As I often say, although I'm in an old people's home with 10,000 things to do, what else have we got to do?
Thank you. Thank you both. This has been fabulous. And I hope that everyone on the call today has gotten some good new ideas about things to do to enhance your reading. So thank you very, very much. And just quickly, I want to mention on November 19th, we are having a program that will be at our demonstration kitchen at our Revere Community Health Center on healthy eating as one ages, and we will have some tips about cooking for one, prep, adaptive tools, and it's going to be our Jen McGlynn, our Geri Clinic triage nurse, will be doing this, helping us with this as a talk show format. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much, Mary and Judith. Have a great afternoon, and maybe get out your books and just enjoy the rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.